Last week, I mentioned Malachi Black's comments in the ring after his match for Prestige Wrestling, where he told the audience that he would answer their questions in due time about his status. But for the first time in the last 22 years, he was going to take a step back, and he was going to recalibrate his life, and he asked for a few months to do so. This is not goodbye, he said, rather, we'll see each other soon. That doesn't sound like a man who is retiring from the ring, but someone who's looking to take some time away to get his head on right. This is after the reports of him getting a conditional release came out from AEW. Not from AEW, but that he got his conditional release from the company. After the sound-off dropped last Sunday, and isn't that when news does tend to break, he issued a statement on social media regarding his status, and I want to read it to you now. Firstly, thank you for all of your messages. Know that they are being read and appreciated. With all of the turmoil going on in the landscape of professional wrestling, I took the time to think about my words, but also needed to wait until conversations between mine and AEW's camp had come to a conclusion. Firstly, I dislike reading parts of my private conversations between myself and AEW in regards to my mental well-being on the internet. These conversations were private and were not meant to be shared with the public. As by now most people realize, I am a very private person and do not feel the need to have stuff like this out on the internet. If you've been following me longer than a cup of coffee, you're aware that I have spoken about them prior, but would like to be the one deciding on when this finds its way to the public and not through someone else's mouth, as with anything through the lips of someone else. The story gets distorted. Secondly, to be in line with the above, they also need context. I did indeed ask for my release. The last 2 years of my life have lended to a lot of setbacks. Both me and my wife have been affected by uncontrollable actions from the outside that resulted in loss of life, medical setbacks, career jeopardizing, the suicide of a close friend, and a close family member almost losing their life, then experiencing an injury that I was sure was going to be the end of my career. I spent every week going through several sessions of rehab, dry needling, and therapy just to be able to walk and compete. Now this being the tip of the iceberg, and with the combination of the promises in my professional field that were not upheld, which resulted as a combination of all of these, to a complete demoralization of life and career. This decision had been in my mind for the past 6 months. It's hard to really put a finger on it and say this was the moment that it all went wrong. But I can tell you after many years that I have learned from a rational point of view to see when I need to hit the brakes, which is what this is. Perhaps once my mind settles on certain things and processes the last 2 years a bit better, I will convey via a different platform than this written out what the exacts were that happened and have a more informed conversation about them. For now, know that I am good. I am taking for the first time in 22 years a few months to recalibrate the last 2 decades of my life. Lastly, I have read a few narratives online in regards to my release, mental health, and my personal life that I can summarize swiftly. If it didn't come from me, it didn't happen. Stuff about conditional releases, stuff in my marriage, or using said mental health to leverage the other when as I said before, that part wasn't even going to be part of the public conversation, are false. My marriage is fine. I am fine. It's just time to make sure those things stay that way. Once again, I appreciate your support, and we will see each other soon enough. So he confirms that he did ask for his release from AEW. He's also not very happy that somebody in the company leaked the details of what he thought were private conversations that he was having with Tony Khan, and possibly others in the company. I know some people will point out how tight-lipped that locker room was when Brody Lee was sick. Nobody said a word. I mean, nothing got out about how bad things were with him. And that's like unheard of, that nothing leaks, behind the scenes in a promotion. I mean, I don't even know when that happens. But with Brody Lee, they kept a very tight lid on things. But you got to remember something. That was a very different locker room than the one they have today. They have a much bigger roster now. A lot of people from the outside that they brought in. They also had Brody Lee's wife directly, ask the roster, please do not say anything. And so they basically did what they felt that she wanted. They gave her what she wanted. They didn't say anything. So that was a very different situation. Because otherwise, this is wrestling, and you have to assume that things are going to get leaked. They always do. I know the line about promises that were made in his professional field that were not upheld. That's going to get a lot of play. It already is. It's going to get a lot of people talking. He has been gone from WWE now for well over a year, but he did mention processing the last 2 years of his life. So it is very likely that he was at least partially referring to how his WWE run came to an end. He admitted that the driving force, he has said the driving force behind Zelina Vega going back to WWE last year was because he was still working there. She re-signed with the company in May of last year, and the very next month, right after he had re-debuted on SmackDown, like a week or two later, they released him. In the history of shitty moves that company has made, that was a pretty shitty one. They got her to re-sign so she could be on the roster with her husband, and then they fired her husband. You don't think that hasn't weighed on him? You don't think that hasn't weighed on the both of them? Of course it has. But it also wouldn't be surprising to learn that he has been unhappy with his position in AEW as well. Because I've been unhappy with his position in AEW. I can't imagine that he wouldn't be unhappy with the way that he's been used. He also cited a lot of other personal issues, death and illness, as reasons for why he asked for his release. It's a combination of a lot of things. It's not any one thing. Dave Meltzer says that Black is one of the people that WWE reached out to, even though they knew he was signed to a 5-year contract. This goes back to the allegations of contract tampering. When he talks about promises not being kept, that line sounds like a shot at AEW, though. And that's not good. I would love to know what those promises were, because depending on what they were, he may well be within his right to want to leave if he feels that he was lied to. If he was promised something and Tony Khan didn't live up to it or reneged on it, then, he's got a case. I don't know about legally, but, just morally, he's got a case. Apparently, Black was not the only AEW star to ask for their release, although Meltzer didn't say who the others were. He just said there were others. Fightful reports that the other names that were contacted by WWE about possibly coming back to the company were Swerve Strickland, which was the first name I said when I talked about the story after it broke. I said I was sure Triple H reached out to Swerve when he was bringing Hit Row back to SmackDown. Hey, we're getting the band back together. You want to come back? So Swerve Strickland was one person that was reached out to. FTR was the other. FTR leaving was the best decision that they ever could have made before Vince McMahon turned them into a pair of fucking Ninja Turtles. They got the hell out of that company. Remember that? Remember those outfits they were pitched about wearing? Best career move they could have made was leaving that company. Now Triple H is in charge, and Triple H did well by FTR when they were in NXT. I think if they went back to WWE now, they would be treated a lot differently. But they also would not have the freedom to work other promotions. They wouldn't be able to work AAA. They wouldn't be able to work New Japan. They wouldn't be able to collect all those belts. But I could definitely see FTR back in WWE one day, and I would not have said that if Vince McMahon was still running creative. It sounds like WWE was blatantly tampering with their talent without a care in the world. I mean, it's no wonder Tony went off on them. Fightful also said while they don't have a name, an AEW source told them that WWE reached out in August to an AEW name who had been with the company since day one. But that even they would be surprised to learn who that person was. So they've piqued my curiosity with that. MJF wouldn't be surprising. Maybe Wardlow? I think WWE would love to have Wardlow. I could see them reaching out to find out when his contract was up. But that's not the only news with regard to the House of Black, which seems to be falling apart. It's less of a house now. It's more of a kind of a rental, with Brody King and Julia Hart being potentially the only members left. Because as I was getting ready to record today's show, there is breaking news on Buddy Matthews. Now, I mentioned Malachi at the house show. The house show was a live event, an indie event a few weeks ago, cutting a promo in the ring and talking about how I'm going to be, taking time away and all that. Buddy Matthews wrestled on an independent show last night for Fight Life Pro Wrestling. And he addressed the audience after the match was over, and he gave a very similar, eerily similar type of speech. He said, "Unfortunately, tonight I'm going to be the bearer of some unfortunate news. As everybody knows, the House of Black has had some issues lately. As all the members of the House, I speak beyond the wall. We want to thank you all for being members of the House. Unfortunately, I, like some of the other members, need to go away for a while. I need to recalibrate. I need to figure out some things. As my brother Malachi once said, this isn't goodbye, this is see you later. And he threw the mic down and he walked off. So something's going on here with the House of Black. Fightful says that it is believed, according to an AEW source, that after the New York City tapings, the Grand Slam shows this week, one source said that they believed it was Buddy's last night, but that has not yet been confirmed. Now we hear Buddy saying the things that he said at the show last night, and it makes me wonder because there's one thing that both of those guys, unlike Brody King, have in common. And the thing they have in common is the fact that they both have significant others working for WWE. So they are apart from them. They are not traveling together. They are not working for the same company. As I mentioned before, Malachi's wife is working for WWE only because she thought she was going back and she was going to be able to be with him. And then he got cut, which is not what they were expecting. And I don't think she would have gone back to the company if she knew that they were going to cut him. So it has to be weighing on them. Buddy Matthews, for those who don't know, is in a relationship with Rhea Ripley. So you have two men here whose girlfriends, wives, whatever, are working for WWE. And it just so happens that at the same time, they have to recalibrate and they have to figure things out and they have to take some time and figure out what their next move is going to be. And I wonder if that has anything to do with it. That seems to be the common bond there that those two guys share. How much of that is affecting their decision to want to step away? And if you're Tony Khan, how do you deal with that? So if somebody works for you and their girlfriend or their boyfriend, their husband, their wife happens to be working for the other side, and one day they wake up and say, you know what, I want to be with them. I'd like my release. I'd like to get out of my contract so I could go be with them. It does set a bad precedent if that's the only reason that they would have for wanting to leave. In the case of Malachi, again, he ran down all these different things. He's got a whole bunch of things, horrible things that have gone on in his life. So he's trying to figure things out. But I'm just looking at this and going, what's the one thing that these two share in common, besides the fact that they both came from WWE? And, maybe both of them want to go work for Triple H now. I don't know, but it's the fact that they have a significant other who's over there, and that's got to make things tough on a relationship. Does Tony Khan say, okay, I'll let you go, knowing full well that they're going to immediately run back to WWE? So that's the situation now that he faces with the House of Black. But it looks like the House of Black was 3. They have now gone to 2, and now it looks like they're going to be down to 1. And Brody King is going to be the last man standing. Now, Brody King is going to be fine on his own. Brody King can do his own thing. He doesn't need to be part of a faction. He'll be okay. I don't know where that leaves Julia Hart, but the House of Black appears to be falling apart. Then there's the Bobby Fish story, which is hilarious. So Ryan Frederick is a moderator on the F4W message board. I guess he's been known to have some inside info in the past. And he claimed that Bobby Fish tried to get Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly to ask for their releases from AEW so they could go back to WWE. And both men told him no. See, Bobby Fish is smart enough. I know they say fish have tiny brains, but Bobby Fish is smart enough to realize that he won't get hired unless Triple H can bring in the other Undisputed Era guys. If he can't get the whole band back together, he ain't going to bring back just the drummer. If they go back, Fish has an automatic in. Without them, there is no Bobby Fish in WWE, unless they have a coaching position for him. But why would Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly leave? I mean, there are certain guys I could totally see wanting to leave who would do better under Triple H than Tony Khan. Cole and O'Reilly, they were being pushed before they got hurt. I guess Bobby Fish wasn't kidding when he said that he would go to war for Triple H. I just picture him on the battlefield, telling Cole and O'Reilly, come on guys, let's go. And then running through the minefield, thinking bombs are falling all around him. He's thinking that they're right behind him. And then he turns and looks back and he sees he's all alone before taking one right in the chest. Oh, Bobby Fish. Fear not, though. Bobby Fish found his way to the Impact Zone. On Friday, he showed up in Victory Road. So that's where you can find him if you like fish. Me, I'm more of a meat and potatoes guy myself. But if you like fish, if you want to go fishing, then you can start watching Impact.